Hello and welcome to Bees 4, our series of videos for aspiring beekeepers and fellow novices. This time we're going to look at painting the hive and adding a second landing board. Also the flow frame versus the wood and wax frame. Okay, painting your hive. Let's stand back a second and look at what we are dealing with. Wood is biodegradable, but some last better than others, some cost more than others. But at the end of the day, heat, cold, water, fungi and bacterial enzymes, and finally ultraviolet will destroy its structure. By applying and reapplying a protective barrier, we can preserve our capital cost of time and money. However, we have the other minor problem that our hives are more rather than less permanently occupied. Fortunately, in sections, we can replace the roof, crown boards and honey box at times, but the brood box would need a total transfer to come in for maintenance. The most practical options are varnish, exterior paint and a long life paint. Using yacht varnish on my shop windows, I used to find it would last for maybe 3 to 5 years and then a couple of recoats. Exterior paint. I was never impressed with this as it would only last a couple of years at best, and I begrudged the time wasted rubbing down all the loose paint. Maybe formulations have changed, but I tried the more expensive long life paint and I would rather stick up to 6 coats of that on, as the surface cleans in coats, and not have to paint again for 15 to 20 years. The proof. Here's one I made earlier. This door was painted about 1995 and this is 2018. That's looking still not too bad for 23 years. There's no glossy shine anymore, and you can see it's flaking a bit where the knots are, because I didn't seal those knots. So the first lesson is seal the knots. In conclusion, in the long term, long life paint still will save you time and money. So I hope this will give you something to think about, and consider the advice of a lazy, tight-fisted miser. This also applies if you have doors and windows to paint around the house, and any other outside woodwork. I think this is now when we need to set up a painting test of different types and brands so we can look up how they fare in the coming years. A second landing board. The bees do not seem to be using the second entrance very much, so I thought maybe a landing board would help. As with most going in at the bottom, to get to the honey box they have to climb up through all the bees in the brood box. So here it is assembled. Only needed 4 screws. At the top is the same piece of scrap ply I used. This was 3 inches wide, but less or more would still do the job. Basically I cut 2 3-inch squares and screwed them on at each end. From the squares I cut a triangle to fit underneath, which you can see later. But the squares are offset to slot into the second entrance gap. These boxes were not precision made, so there's a bit of slack there, and I reckon we need to figure out something to hold it in more securely. Here's one box on top of the other with the gap, and it just slots in quite nicely. There we go. That looks quite efficient really. Give it a good bit of paint and we're off and ready to go. Easy out, easy in. Just got to figure out some way of securing it on there, because I think a good gust of wind could knock that out and we don't want to hurt our bees. So there's the triangles that I cut off on the corners. They go underneath there just to hold it up. Now in the spring and autumn we might not need as much ventilation, so with a couple of different size offcuts we can reduce the opening size to keep the warmth in. Now we can see here the second entrance with the bees are fanning away like crazy, and there's the queen excluder on top of the yellow box, so we couldn't fit in the second landing board. I've given it a coat of undercoat, and I put some simple eye hooks on there to attach it to the hive in theory. And here it is, it's on there, quite easy to put on. The bees seem to be going on there, so we just need to get the CCTV watching and see how much they like it. A question crossed my mind about whether bees would prefer wood frames to the flow frame. So we did a little experiment. Obviously if the bees have got a flow frame honey box on top, they're going to fill it with honey and you'll get honey out of it. But do the bees actually prefer the wood to the flow? This is a combination of bits of film, and it shows them working quite happily on the wood and the flow frame. The first 4 frames I put in on the left went in a couple of weeks beforehand, so that became work in progress, so they worked on that a bit harder, and then they started cleaning up the flow frame. But as you see, oh, we just missed that, as you can see there in the middle, they are filling up the flow frame with honey, and it's capped. But if we look at these 4 wooden ones, they are nicely full of honey. Crikey. Well done, girls. We've got 4 full frames of honey there. Ah, and a wasp. Yes, sad thing about the wasps. This is time to learn the 4-letter word, swear word of beekeepers. Wasp wars. That will be the subject of the next video. Had a lot of trouble then the following week. But there we go. We can see we've got a nice lot of honey in there. There's actually 2 full frames of honey in the brood box as well. But the conclusion is, from this little experiment, is that they don't seem to have any preference for the wood against the flow. Let's look at the first 2 frames. The first one on the right is only got a few bees on there cleaning it up now, and the second one is a lot heavier and there's a lot more bees on there because they're starting to draw out the wax cells. So it's a sort of work in progress across the hive. They've put the honey on the left, they're working on the flow frame, and they're starting to draw the wax cells here. But at the end of the day, it shows from this little experiment that they're not bothered whether they're working on a flow or a wood frame. And you can mix them in the same hive box. Hope you have found our video useful, and in Bees 5 we are going to look at the serious issue of wasp wars. They can weaken the hive and even kill it, so how to fight back, because we're in it to win it.